Hey everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel, and I am excited to do my October mid-month wrap-up with you guys today. I cannot believe we're already halfway through October because I feel like this year is flying by, and actually I just put up my September wrap-up last week. So you're probably like, is it really time for a mid-month wrap-up already? And yes it is. Because I was super late putting my September wrap-up up. But it's all good. We are going to be here for a minute, so grab a snack, grab a drink. I brought a drink along because, you know, yummy. We're going to be here for a minute because I read a ton of books for the first half of October. I actually ended up reading 15 books. So I only counted from the 1st of October to the 15th. So basically I was averaging like a book a day, which is nuts. I don't usually read that many. I typically read between 15 to 20 books for the entire month. So I'm super shocked by how many I got done so far. And to be completely like forthcoming, part of the reason why I read so many was because I was listening to audiobooks. I'm really loving audiobooks right now. And some of the audiobooks that I downloaded were like not very long. They were like 6 to 8 hours long. And I tend to listen to most of my audiobooks on 1.75 speed or 2 times speed. So if I'm doing that and it's only like a 6-hour long audiobook, you can get through it in like 3 hours-ish, 3 to 4 hours. So technically if I'm at work for the day and it's a day where I'm just pulling reports and pulling data and putting reports together, I can get through that audiobook in the one day. So between that and just my regular reading that I do on my own, I ended up averaging about a book a day, which is crazy, but also really cool that I've already read like 15 books. I was looking at my yearly goals and I'm already at like 100 books for the year. So I'm definitely have made my goal for 2021 and I'm so excited. So anyway, grab a snack, grab a drinky drink. We're going to be here for a minute. I had some really, really good books and some surprising ones this time around. So yay for that. But as always, let's get through the DNFs first. I have myself kind of off to the side a little bit, so I have room to put a book cover here. If you're wondering why I'm sitting this way, so that you guys can see the book cover when I put my book cover up. So the first 2 books were DNFs. The first one is 365 Days by Blanka Lipinska. You guys know I love mafia romance. And if you're like, that sounds oddly familiar. Yes, it does. Because that is the Netflix movie that everyone was going goo-goo for in 2020. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I watched like the first 30 minutes of that movie and was like, this is too much for me. It's kind of like watching a porno on Netflix. Not my cup of tea, and there was really no plot. But I know, for those of you who don't know the story, the book was originally a Polish romance novel that was made into the Netflix movie, and then the Polish novel was then translated into English and released in English, I think earlier this year, because of how popular the Netflix movie was. So this is why it's now in English. So I thought, well, you know, maybe I misunderstood the movie because, I don't know, it's Netflix. They were going for a shock factor and, you know, maybe it will make more sense if I read the book. But honestly, it really just, it wasn't much of a plot. First of all, I got through maybe 3 chapters. The dude was Massimo, I'm probably saying his name wrong, was already banging people in the first chapter that were not the heroine of the book. When you meet the heroine in the second chapter, she's bratty and totally bratty and stuck up. And there's nothing likable about either character. So I was just like, I don't love this book. And I just DNF'd it. I'm like, I DNF'd the movie and I DNF'd the book. I just don't care for that particular story. The second book that I DNF'd was called Rebel Heir by Vi Keeland and Penelope Ward. And I feel bad about this because I've read several books by Vi Keeland. In fact, I hope I'm saying her name right. If it might be V or I'm going with Vi. I have a book actually on my list for today that I absolutely loved. And it's one of my favorites that I've read this year. But this particular book just didn't work for me. I didn't care for it. So It starts off really good. You have, I can't remember their names. I didn't write down their names, but basically you have the woman who goes into this bar. She's filling in for a friend. The bar is short-staffed and the friend's like, hey, can you come work and help us out? But she's never tended bar before, so she's messing up. She meets this, who she thinks is a customer, who's like really has an attitude with her and just is like giving her a hard time. And she's like, you know, I've never worked bar before. And she kind of gets in this little spat with him. And it turns out that he's the owner of the bar. And so that's how they meet each other. And the banter is really good. There's this sort of like, okay, you suck at being a bartender, but I need a waitress. Can you be a waitress? And really cute, like, banter and humor and really funny. But then just as soon as like they're getting past all their issues, I'm not going to spoil, but there's issues going on in the book that they have to get past. And just as soon as they start kind of getting past some of those issues and actually forming a relationship with each other, and I am going to spoil this because this was a huge, like, I'm done with the book at this moment, you find out, spoiler, that she is pregnant by someone that she had a short fling with prior to meeting the hero of the book. So then you're like, well, they're already dealing with what they're dealing with, and now she's dealing with a surprise pregnancy from someone who she slept with prior to the whole book starting. I'm like, y'all know I hate the secret baby trope, so I was out. Yeah. All right. So now I'm looking at my notes again, if you're wondering why I'm looking at the side. The books that I read, 15 of them. Again, bring a snack and some drinks. We're going to be here for like 45 minutes. The number one book I read so far was King's Crown by Marie Johnston. Now, I read a Marie Johnston book a few months ago, or was it last year? Don't remember. Didn't like it. But this one was an audiobook, and I was like, oh, let me try it. King's Crown was a 5-star book for me. I loved this book. So the story is that you have Kendall, who at the very beginning of the book loses her job. And I can't remember the reason she loses her job, but she loses her job and she's like, let me take a chance. I need work. And she sees this crazy job offer that's like a too good to be true kind of job posting. So she decides to apply for it. And part of the application process is that she has to fly out for this in-person interview, and it's to be like an executive assistant to King's Oil, or I think it's called King's Oil. But anyway, it is this oil business that needs an executive assistant. So she flies out there, but lo and behold, while they're there, they get caught in a snowstorm and she gets caught in this layover. They're snowed in. All the hotels are sold out. And so she suddenly has to share a hotel room with a stranger who happens to be Gentry King. And if you're like, King's Oil, Gentry King, you would be correct. He is it's like a family-owned business. I think it's his children running it, and he's like president, CEO, something. He's part of the family that owns this company. And the position that she's interviewing for is actually to be the administrative assistant to her, or executive assistant to his son. So they end up snowed in together, and they both are instantly attracted to each other. There's a huge age gap. He's like close to 50. I think he's like 48, 49. He's not quite 50, but he's almost there. And she's in her 20s. And they both like each other, but nothing happens in this snowstorm because of a promise that he made to his children. So the story is that he's a widower. His wife passed away a few years ago. And part of his grieving process is that he basically became this like man whore who's going around and sleeping with everything that moved because he was lonely and didn't want to be by himself. And the kids are like, look, we know you're lonely, but you got to get yourself together. You got to quit drinking. You got to quit sleeping around, get yourself together. So he makes a promise to get it together to his kids. So when he meets her, he's like, I really like her, but I promised my kids that I would cool it. And so long story short, the book moves on. She gets a position with the company. And so it's this really cute, like, slow burn romance of them really liking each other, but no one acting on it. And then when they finally do get together in the book, they've like been together for like half the book. And you're like, yes, finally, they admit that they like each other. But what I liked about this book, because it's a pretty typical plot, right? You know, age gap, they like each other. They can't be together for extenuating circumstances and blah, blah, blah. But what I liked about this book is how it approaches the age gap, because the girl in the book is only like a couple years difference to his children. So the age gap is an actual discussion. Not only are his children concerned because Again, he had been like drinking and sleeping around the year prior and really in a deep depression. And this is his first like serious relationship that he's actually in since his wife passed away. So the kids are already concerned about that. But then the fact that she's only a couple years older than them, and then there's a discussion about like, you know, you already had your children and raised your children and are an empty nester, and I'm in my 20s. What does that look like? Do we want kids? Do I want kids? How does it work? Because you already have kids that are like my age and you have grandkids on the way, and just, it's really like an actual discussion about the age gap. I feel like sometimes age gap romances skip over that discussion, but this one definitely doesn't. So anyways, love this book, 5 stars, and the audiobook was really, really good. Book number 2 was Ruthless Creatures by J.T. Geissinger. I'm going with that because it sounds good. I've seen several people read this book and I loved it. I gave this one 4 stars actually, and I wasn't expecting it. This was another mafia romance. So it starts off with, the woman's name is Sloane and the guy is Cage, and Sloane is mourning the death of her fiance who went missing 5 years ago. She goes out with a friend to a bar and basically gets wasted because it would have been their 5th wedding anniversary. He went missing just a couple days prior to their wedding, and police have been looking for him. No one knows what happened. He's presumed dead at this point, but there's really no answers for her. And she has been basically mourning his past. So she goes out on the anniversary of what would have been their wedding and basically gets all depressed and drunk. But this particular day, while she's at the bar, she sees this guy who she's like, hey, I actually think this guy's pretty cute. She tries to pick him up at the bar, but he knows that she's drunk. So he's like, no, I'm good. But then they later find out that he is the new next door neighbor. So she and him meet each other again because he's the next door neighbor, and they end up liking each other. But what she doesn't know is that he is actually a part of the mafia. And the reason that he is there is he is investigating and trying to get information about her fiance that went missing, who skipped out and stole money from the mafia. So it's like this mystery of what happened to the fiance, plus he's not supposed to be with her because he's trying to get information and then basically like get rid of her, if you get my drift. And it's very much like a lot of like, it's a mystery, forbidden romance type thing. It has a little bit of insta-love, which I don't usually like in a novel, but this one was really well done. And I actually liked it so much that I picked up the second book in the series, and I have that downloaded and I'm getting ready to start that today. So I really liked it, gave it 4 stars. The third book I read, okay, it's actually the third and fourth go together because they're a duet. And I think it might be part of a series, but I know the first 2 books kind of work as a duet. And I read the second book because I was frustrated with the first one. So this is the story of, well, actually it's called Wall Street Titan by Anna Zaires, because I don't think I gave the name of the book yet. So Wall Street Titan is about Marcus and Emma, and basically Marcus and Emma meet at a coffee shop. They're both there on dates that were set up by other people. Emma was set up on a dating app to meet a guy named Mark. And then Marcus is there meeting a woman named Emmeline, who was set up by a professional matchmaker that he pays money to. And she is kind of a poor, trying to make it, doesn't have a lot of money type person. And he is on Wall Street with tons of money. That's why it's called Wall Street Titan. And they think that they're each other's dates, but they're actually not. So there's this really cute banter at the beginning of like, you're not who I saw on the picture, because he's not the right guy. It was a total mix up. But they end up meeting each other and they decide to keep in touch. They start dating. I think the thing that really frustrated me was that there was a lot going on in this book that I was just like, this is boring. Like a lot of really long scenes about them going out to dinner and her trying to pay for dinner. And he's like, I'm paying for you. And then like this long diatribe about her cats. Like she's kind of portrayed as like this nerdy book nerd with a bunch of fluffy cats who is a total dork and is very naive about the world for being 25 years old. But it ends on a cliffhanger, and I'm like, well, crap, now I have to read the second book because it ends on a cliffhanger, and I hate cliffhangers. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. because I liked the story. It was just kind of like drawn out a little bit. And so the second book, to kind of sum this up, the second book is called Titan's Addiction by Zaires. I gave this one 4 stars. Same couple. Here's the difference. First of all, half the stuff that happened in these books could have been cut out. Like, I don't care about how many times you play with the cats and eat dinner. You could have condensed this into one book, maybe a little bit of a longer book, and it would have been fine, in my opinion, in my honest opinion. But also, some of the things that you're like, why are these people acting like this, is explained in the second book. So in the second book, you get a little bit more backstory. You get a little bit more like, this is why you're the way you are. This is why you feel so funny about money. This is why he has a trouble admitting that he's in love with her because he has past childhood hurts. Like, all the things that you're like, I don't get why they are the way they are, is explained in the second book. So I really feel like you could have foregoed, there we go, foregoed, the whole cliffhanger thing and just condensed this into one big book, and it would have been like a good solid 4-star book. But I didn't like the fact that it was broken into 2. So it was okay. The first book I got 3 stars. Second book I gave 4. Number 5 was The Alpha by Dannika Dark. This is book number 2 in the Black Arrowhead series. You guys know I love Dannika Dark. I have a whole video about her 7 series. If you haven't checked it out yet, she commented on my video the other day and I felt like a rock star. I had a little fangirling moment. I'm so excited that she saw my video. But anyway, this is book 2 of the Black Arrowhead series. I freaking love this series so far. It's very reminiscent of the 7 series. It has the same feel of the 7 series, but it's much more like action-packed, which I really appreciate. I do think this one was a little more romance-heavy than the first one, which of course I love because I'm the romance fan. But this is a story of Hope. Now, you know Hope from the 7 series. She is the daughter of Lakota and, not Lakota, Ivy and, what's his name? Lorenzo. I drew a blank. She's the daughter of Lorenzo and Ivy, who are book 4 of the 7 series. Is it book 4? Book 4 of the 7 series. And she's kind of talked about in several books in the 7 series. And of course is featured pretty heavily in book 1 because she is Lakota's sister from book 1. So it's all connected into the same family here. And in this story, you've got Lakota and Melody who are going out of town to celebrate their mating from the first book in the series. And Hope is left alone in charge of the store. While Melody is gone, she ends up being harassed and has people like vandalizing the store and causing issues at the store. And she's really nervous about it. But Tack comes into town. He is also from book 1 to make amends with Lakota for things that happened in that last book. And while they're there, they meet each other, they fall in love with each other, and the story goes on from there. This one was definitely, again, a mystery, like it was in the first book, of who is vandalizing the store and causing problems for the girls, and then also the romance between Hope and Tack. But one of the things I really loved about this book is it addresses some... So, like, if you know Lorenzo and Ivy from the 7 series, they are such a strong couple, really strong-minded individuals. Lorenzo is a pack leader. He's an alpha. He's very, very, like, a strong man. And then Ivy is very strong also. She's an alpha female. So when you meet Hope and she's a little bit, like, reserved and quiet, you're not sure why. But there's a discussion in this book about her being seduced by an older pack member and how... you know, she was young and he took advantage of her and how it hurt her relationship with the pack and it hurt her relationship with the parents. And I really liked that discussion of, you know, people in the pack were seeing her as like this bad person. She can't keep it in her pants kind of thing. She's a whore, that kind of thing. But in reality, she was just really naive and he seduced her. And so I love how that whole discussion was kind of explained in this book. So I gave this one 5 stars and I loved it. All right, and this is where things went downhill a little bit. I read the next book in the Underworld series by Sophie Lark. This is book number 4, and it was called Dom. And this is the story of Dom and Lara. I didn't really care for this book. So Dom is the brother of Ivan. So it was nice to see some more Ivan and Sloane because I love Ivan and Sloane in this series. So their book was one of my favorites that I've read so far in the series, but this book I was kind of a little bit bored with. So you have Lara, who is the daughter of another Russian mob boss somewhere who is undercover in Paris. Are they in Paris? No, where are they at? St. Petersburg. Sorry, wrong city. they're in St. Petersburg. She's undercover as the police commissioner's daughter, and he is protecting her while they try to take down some of the illegal activity that her father is doing because he was very abusive to her. And then she meets Dom, and it's cute, but it's not my favorite that I've read in the Underworld series. I feel like it was just okay. It's not really that it's a bad story. I just was kind of like, oh, okay. Like, it's cute. Like, I don't know. It didn't hit for me. I felt like they were just an okay couple. I didn't really feel like it really moved the plot along all that much, which I think is why I was kind of like, eh. And I guess for me also, just in my thoughts, I don't see how this is like necessarily connected. I mean, obviously these two are connected. Dom and Ivan are connected because they're brothers, but it's not like Brutal Birthright. Like, I don't see like how they're all connected. Maybe it'll make more sense later because I think there's like 8 books in the series, but I don't quite get how they're all connected yet. Not sure. All right, book number 7 was Love Unexpected by Marina, Hanna, and this one was actually pretty good. I gave this one 4 stars. In this story, you have Adam and Jules who meet at a bar, and he basically walks in. She's out with friends drinking. He gives her this giant like smoocheroo and leaves her hanging and walks out. She's like, wait, what? What was that? This guy's super hot, and he just like smooches me and walks away. And then all of a sudden, it turns out that she goes later on to start her new job, and lo and behold, he's her boss. So it's another office romance. You notice I can read a lot of these office romance ones. There's a lot of audiobooks on my Hoopla that are office romance. I don't know why I'm liking them so far. He is known for being a womanizer and sleeping around, and all the co-workers kind of warn her don't get attached to him because he doesn't stay with anybody very long. But that actually... and it doesn't end up being the case in this book. There are some trigger warnings here for, there's an age gap. It's an age gap romance. If you don't like age gap, you won't like this one. Number 2, there's trigger warnings for a surprise pregnancy, which I usually don't like, but this one was done well. There's also trigger warnings for abortion in this book, not from our couple in this book, but from a previous relationship that he went through, and that some of the reason why he is the way he is because he was hurt by someone in the past who had an abortion. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, but just so you know, that is a trigger warning if you've ever read a book, or if you ever had that situation in your life and that triggers you. Just an FYI that does come up in the book as a discussion between the two characters and why he feels the way he does about relationships and children and the whole 9. So I give that one 4 stars. I actually really liked it. Book number 8, guys. I think we're halfway there and we're like 20 minutes in. So let's see if we can get this done in 40 minutes. Number 8 was Dr. Mitchell by Raylin Marks. Sorry. Dr. Mitchell by Raylin Marks. I didn't love this one. I gave this one 2.5 stars. So in this story, you have Jake and Ashley who meet at the wedding of a mutual friend, and they spend the night enjoying themselves. I think he's in the wedding party and she's just there as like a friend, and they meet each other and they end up getting drunk and they have a one-night stand. No big deal. They move on. Fast forward to a year later, Ashley ends up, her father has a heart attack and she is at the hospital, and the surgeon who comes in to help her father through his heart situation happens to be Dr. Jake Mitchell. And she's like, oh no, this is the guy from a year ago. I can't believe he remembers me. How awkward is this? And they start up a relationship. So it starts off really good. And I really like the friendship between the two and how he's there for her dealing with her father, and how he's such a good support system to the family going through this heart issue with her dad. But then it just kind of gets boring after that. I had to really trudge through the last half of this book to even just get there. I just feel like it was pretty uneventful in a lot of ways. I hate to say that because, again, it just kind of fizzles. It just fizzles. So it's not that it's a terrible book. It was a great idea, but poor execution, which is why I gave it 2.5 stars. Book number 9 is Trapped with the Mob Boss by Nicole Fox. Y'all know I love my mafia romances, and this is no different, but this one was just okay. I gave this one 3.5 stars. So at the beginning of the book, you have Yuri, who kidnaps Bella at the order of his father, who's a Russian mob boss. Bella is the daughter of a senator, and apparently the senator had some inner workings with the mafia, and they are kidnapping her to kind of get a ransom out of him and get information for him to do something that they need him to do. Didn't quite understand all of that. And while she's being kidnapped, she finds out that there's this whole other subplot with a secret society, and he finds out she's not safe where she's at, so he kidnaps her again. It was actually really interesting, surprisingly, for as much of the plot jumping all over around. It was actually really interesting. It's a little bit of insta-love, but it's done well, so I don't fault it for that. It's actually also a pretty short book. I listened to this one on audiobook. I think the entire audiobook was maybe 5 or 6 hours long, so it's a super short audiobook, and I actually really enjoyed this one. I think I will probably read the next books in the series. This is a full book though, so you can read this book by itself. You don't have to read the rest of the series, but I probably will, just to kind of see what happens. But I will say that it was good. I liked it. I don't know though. I feel like the plot kind of jumped around a lot, but it all wraps up nicely at the end. So just keep in mind, you're gonna have to pay a little bit of attention of what's going on. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. Number 10 was Rogue by Blair Babylon. Okay, so when I finished reading this book, I put my Kindle down and I thought, what in the world did I just read? I gave this one 1 star. I'm sorry. I hate to do that, but I give this one 1 star. So I'm going to read it to you guys because it's crazy. So you meet them it's Maxence and Dree. But he goes by Augustine in the book. Anyway, long story short, they meet at a bar. You have Dree in Paris, and she's drunk off her butt, drunk dancing on the bar. And she is getting ready to be accosted by some guys. So Maxence goes to rescue her off the bar and to get her back to her hotel safely so she doesn't get accosted while she's there. He gives her this fake name of Augustine because he doesn't want her to know who he really is. And she calls herself Dree, but her name is really Andrea because they're fake naming it. They don't want to know who each other really are. They end up having a one-night stand, but then he feels guilty and he comes back the next day with breakfast for her, shows her around Paris. They end up developing this little relationship. There's this really confusing plot where he's being followed around the city of Paris and you can't figure out why. There are hints that he's a celebrity, or is he in the mafia, or is he a secret royalty? And she can't figure out why he's meeting with all of these people. And there's a really strong religious sort of element to this book because it's very much she talks about being Catholic, and he talks about also being very heavy into Catholicism. And then there's this subplot of she's in Paris because somebody stole all the money out of her account and she has no money and everything that's in her name has been stolen from her. But her family thinks that she stole it from her ex-boyfriend. And I'm just I don't understand what's going on. But then here's the big spoiler, big major spoiler at the end of the book. I'm going to ruin it for everybody. So if you don't want to be ruined, do not finish listening to my review of this book. At the very end of the book, it ends at a cliffhanger. And you find out that Maxence is so you're thinking he's royalty or part of a mob, right? Nope, he is not. He's actually part of the secret Jesuit order to become a priest. So the whole book, she's been running around Paris and developing this relationship with a guy who's learning to be a priest. And I'm why? 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 I don't know. I didn't love the characters enough to care about reading the next book in the series. I mean, I know people are into that, but it was heavily religious, and then the whole priest thing kind of freaked me out a little bit, so I was done with the book. I'm like, I'm out. I only gave it 1 star. If you love this book, I'm sorry. I didn't care for it. But then things got better. So number 11 was Taken by the Dragon King by Amelia Shaw. I do like shifter romances. This one was pretty good. I gave this one 3 stars. And in this one, you have this dragon shifter who lives in another world and is given a vision of his fated mate. So he ends up by a magical sorceress. So he ends up going to the human world to find her and kidnap her and bring her back. So he does, and it's really about them, like, her navigating this world. She doesn't know anything about shifters, and it's all new to her. It's a very, very short book. I think the entire book was only like 170 Kindle pages, so it's a super short book. And the heroine is plus size, so there's a little bit of like this whole, you'll get tired of me because I'm human and I'm fat, and like no one cares. And then the hero was a little bit one-dimensional, so I gave this one 3 stars. I can't talk. I gave this one 3 stars. The reason why I did is it's not a bad book, but it's a trope I've seen done before, and I've seen it done better. Like, I've read a lot of these, like, dragon shifters. He kidnaps her and takes her off to wherever, and blah, blah. And this one was just okay. But here's the thing. It is a nice, fun, short read. If you're looking for something short that's a little bit, has a paranormal element or a magical type element, because it's dragons. So it could technically be like a magical type, fantasy type thing. And I really liked that it's short. I mean, it's just a nice, like, I got a couple hours in the evening to read a good book kind of thing. So I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. It's not a bad book. I don't know if I care about reading the rest of the books in that series either, but you never know. If I'm looking for something short, sweet, and cute, I might check it out. All right. Another one. I'm reading a lot of these, you guys, because I read 15 books. There's a lot to remember here. So if you're like, why is she reading so much? That's why. It's just a lot of information. So the next book, number 12, was called Secret Vow by Willow Fox. This is book number 1 of Mafia Marriages. I gave this one 2.5 stars. This one was a good premise, but again, I'll explain why I kind of scored it a little lower. So in this one, you have Nicole, who's the daughter of a mafia boss. She storms out of her house one night after her father announces that he has found a husband for her and that he's arranging a marriage for her, which is pretty typical of mafia romances. That tends to be a pretty common, like, storyline in a lot of these, because that's what they actually, if you read up on mafia, that's what they actually do to their children. It's super fun. She runs off to this bar club type place, spends the next couple of hours dancing and having fun, having guys buy her drinks. And while she's there, she meets this guy who buys her a drink. They end up dancing the night away, get a little nookie, and then she runs away. What she doesn't know is that this guy that she was with was actually a rival mob boss who is her father's enemy. And she does not know that. So spoiler alert there. That's where it all kind of goes crazy after that. So she's kidnapped by these people, by her father, to teach her a lesson. There's a surprise pregnancy. Then Dante kidnaps her. Dante's the guy in the book. She ends up getting poisoned somehow. Like, it just gets bonkers after this. And I was like, I can't even keep up with all the craziness here. But I think the worst part for me was that she just, like, magically falls in love with him at the end. So, like, you have all this stuff going on, all this craziness. He's lied to her. Her father's lied to her. She's been kidnapped. She's been poisoned. She's got this baby out of the blue. And all of a sudden, she's just, like, magically in love. And I'm like, but why? Because he was kind of a jerk to you. Again, I've seen this trope done before, and I've seen it done better. So it's not bad. Again, a quick read. But I've seen it done better. And then another one. So this one I kind of feel bad for. I've been really excited about the Underworld Kings books. For those of you who don't know, it's like 17 books, I think, in the series. And the way it works is this mafia meets MC type thing. You've got pretty much, I think, every book is a different author. And some of my favorite authors are writing books in this. I know, like, Cora Riley has one. I think Sophie Lark has one. Is it Penelope Snow? No, Jenica Snow. Penelope Snow. Jenica Snow. I don't know. There's several authors I really like who are going to have books in this series. So this is the first one that came out, and it's called Razor's Edge. This one's by Mila Crawford. And I ended up I liked this book, but I had some issues with it. So I gave this book 2.5 stars, which I feel bad starting off a series this way. But the good news is that every book is by a new author. So even if you hate a book, or if you really dislike a certain author's writing style, like every book is by a new author. So that's kind of cool. So I will definitely still continue this series. But it starts off with Ellison, who moves to town after the death of her brother. She's 16 years old at the time, and while she's there, the new neighbor across the street, or the neighbor she meets who lives across the street, I can't remember his name. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but anyway, this guy is the son of a motorcycle club president. They don't know that when they move there, obviously. She ends up developing a relationship with him, even though he's the son of a motorcycle club president. He's actually very sweet and well-mannered and treats her well. So the first, I would say 50% of the book is them at the age of 16 dating and going to high school and developing this relationship. And then there's a small time jump to 18. She's celebrating her 18th birthday. They end up having a evening together, if you get my drift. And then there is a circumstance that happens that sends him to jail for the next 10 years. And then you have a 10-year jump where you then return to him getting out of prison after his sentence. And surprise, surprise, one of the tropes I hate in the world that has secret baby that he did not know about, because the entire time he was in prison, he refused to speak to her because he wanted her to move on without him. So then you have him getting out of prison and dealing with the secret baby thing, who is now a 10-year-old girl. So I think the two things that really bothered me were, number one, half the book is spent with them in high school, so they're underage for half the book, which I didn't love. And then also, I hate secret baby, secret pregnancy, surprise child trope. I just don't think it's needed. It would have already had enough drama with him being in prison for 10 years and them having to reconnect as adults and see if they really do love each other as adults. But then throwing in like a baby, I just felt was kind of like unnecessary a little bit. So not my favorite, but it was a good start to the series. I think it sets up the MC okay, and it sets up, there's an introduction to Mafia, so I'm assuming that's the Mafia connection. I don't know yet, but I went ahead and downloaded book 2 of the series, and I'm actually starting that probably in the next couple of days, so we'll see. Book number 14 was Water for Elephants by Sara Gruen. I don't think I really need to go into too much detail with this book because I'm pretty sure that most of us have already seen the movie for this one. And I just read the book because I've never actually read the book. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It's not really a romance. I mean, it's just more of like I don't know if you call it more of like a historical fiction type thing. Obviously takes place with like the circus, and I mean, it was a good book. Again, I'm not going to give too much detail on this one because I feel like everyone's already read this one, but I'm glad I read it in person. I now own a copy of this. I've never seen the movie, so I might check out the movie, but I liked it. It was good. I see why everyone was reading it, and I see why it was chosen for a movie, so yay for them. Water for Elephants, I gave 4 stars. And then book number 15, you guys, is definitely going down. Besides the first one, which was King's whatever, the very first one, this is probably my favorite book that I have read the entire first half of this month, and that is called Bossman by Vi Keeland. This is the one I was telling you. This is like 1,000,000 stars out of 5. This is the story of Chase and Reese, and I love this one so much. So they meet each other at the beginning of the book. She is trying to get out of this really bad date, and she is like off at the bathroom on the phone with her friend being like, hey, I need you to like call me with a fake emergency so I can get the heck out of this terrible date. And then Chase is also coming back from the bathroom on a separate date with someone else, and he's like, you're being a real, itch bay, for lack of a better term, for doing this to the poor guy. This is a fancy restaurant. It takes weeks or months to get a reservation here. So the fact that he got you in shows that he actually likes you and you're being really mean to him and I don't like it. And she's like, yeah, whatever. So he calls her out on her rude behavior. They both go back to their tables. And then all of a sudden, Chase walks his way over to her table with his date. And he's like, Reese? is it you? I haven't seen you since middle school. And he comes up with this whole fake story about like, we were boyfriend and girlfriend in middle school and all this like fake stories. And she's just like, dude, really? But it ends up being really funny. They're like playing off each other. They totally, their dates totally fall for it. It's this super cute scene where he's lying off his butt and she just goes along with it and ends up becoming very memorable. And then flash forward to a few months later, she is unemployed and looking for a job and runs into Chase when she finds out she is interviewing for the company that he works for, but she doesn't realize it at the time that not only does he work for the company, but he owns the company. So it's another office romance. That's why it's called Bossman, duh. And in this particular book, what I love about it is there's so much depth to these characters. Again, I've seen this trope done a million times. How many books have I read in the last 2 or 3 months that have the same exact trope, right? You meet, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, he's my boss, but I love him. I mean, I've read these before. What's really cool about this particular book is that they're both overcoming past hurts that keep them from developing relationships. A spoiler alert for this one is that he is overcoming the death of his fiancée 7 years ago. And she was murdered and nobody solved the murder. And then she's also dealing with some past childhood trauma. So he's not really been in any kind of serious relationship for the last 7 years since the death of his fiancée. And so you see them trying to like, you know, we work together, it's going to be awkward. And he's like, I don't know that I want a relationship with someone else because I was so hurt when my fiance died. And then I would say it's like 50% of the way through the book before the two of them actually end up, okay, we love each other and we want to be together. And by the time you hit that point in the book, you're like, come on, y'all need to be together already. So I think it's a really good slow burn where when you get there, you're like, finally, you all end up together. And then there's some other circumstances that happen in this book. So there's a lot that they have to work through. This is absolutely one of the best books I have read in a long time. So to kind of put this in perspective, his humor in this book is super cute. And he kind of reminds me of like Savio, you know, that sort of like arrogant swagger thing that Savio has from Cora Riley's Kimura Chronicles. He sort of reminds me of Savio, but without the man horror status. He's actually a really stand-up guy. And I also really love that the woman in the book is very much strong-willed, strong-minded, and not a pushover. She stands up for herself. And the ending of this book was super, super sweet. He finally gets answers. The murder of his fiancée is solved. And you see like everything so nicely wrapped up at the end of this book. I actually really love this. And I'm going to buy a physical copy of this because I loved this book so much. It was so good. I listened to the audiobook version. The audiobook is really nice. And I think that the audiobook reader, what do they call them? The audiobook voice person. Narrator. Does a really good job with both characters in this book. So, Bossman by Vi Keeland was a gazillion stars out of 5, and I highly recommend this one. The audiobook was great, and I'm buying myself a copy. Alright guys, those are my 15 books for the first half of October. I have a lot of books that I want to read for the last half of October, but in all honesty, I am starting a new job. So I don't know how much reading I'll actually get done, but yay if you made it this far. Mary needs a swig of some Diet Pepsi because we have been here for a minute. You guys, what have you read for the first half of October? Let me know what is your favorite book you have read so far. And leave it in the comments below so I can check it out. All right, guys, I will talk to you later. Bye.